time to get rolling. So the first thing we're going to talk about is this refresher on national performance measures. And in particular, we want to define 3 terms. The first is national performance measures. What does it mean for there to be national performance measures? Well, we use that term national intentionally because national performance measures are the standard set of measures that we use across the country and across actually all of our national service programs, which is really nice because it allows us to take the impact of our grantees in, say, Maine, and combine it with the impact of our grantees in, say, California. And that's true from RSVP program to RSVP program, but it's also true across all of our programs. So we can do the same thing with our foster grandparent and senior companion programs, which means if we've got an RSVP program that's helping underprivileged youth in a school, we can take that and add it to the impact of an FGP program that's doing the same thing and present a really unified picture of national service all across the country. And that's really important to our stakeholders, who, by the way, include all of you as taxpayers. But of course, it does mean that they have to be standardized a little bit. We have to add apples to apples, right? We can't have 100 different performance measures blooming. There needs to be a certain amount of standardization. Next, we have our performance measure requirements. And those requirements are the specific requirements that vary program to program. So while we have a standard set of measures all across the country, our programs have these minimum benchmarks, these minimum expectations that allow for more flexibility, that really allow programs to vary and for us to be more sensitive to the needs of individual programs, because at the end of the day, an RSVP program is not an FGP program, and we need to take that difference into account. And then finally, the performance measure instructions are where these things combine. It's just a document, but it's a document that contains the menu of specific measures, and how you can use each of them. It also tells you about the rules for your specific program, those requirements for your specific program. That's often known as Appendix B because it is Appendix B to the invitation to apply. And if we have time at the end of the webinar, we'll take a look at that. When we talk about performance measures in the world of Senior Corps, we're also talking about work plans, of course, because that's where we talk about what we're trying to achieve and how we'll measure it. This shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, but our work plans have 4 major parts: the community need, the service activity, the outputs, and the outcomes. And those last 2 parts are what we typically think of when we think of performance measurement, when we think of how to measure performance, the outputs and the outcomes. There's another term for this logical connection. Some of you may know it. It's a theory of change. If you hear the word theory of change, you're really just talking about what we're asking for in our work plans. A work plan is a way to document a theory of change. You'll notice that the outcome in this box is dotted, and that's because not every work plan has to have an outcome. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. And of course, we ask some more detailed questions about each of these, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. Now, this is just a refresher. It was always going to be brief, and it's even briefer now. And if you want more information, the best place to find it is the Managing Senior Corps Grants page. That's where you can find your performance measure instructions, Appendix B, and it's also home to some other tools that we'll spotlight as we go through the rest of the day. Now let's get into the meat of what we want to talk about: national performance measurement requirements, and in particular, the new requirements that all of you who are going through your administrative renewal this year will be encountering for the first time. Now notice I say that it's new for you because it's good to know that there are actually 2 cohorts of RSVP grantees who've already gone through this transition. The way we do this is basically every year we transition 1/3 of our portfolio into this new system. I shouldn't say a new system. It doesn't happen all the time. It's just been this past 3 years. So many of your colleagues have actually already gone through this transition, and that's important to know because they can be a really great resource as you think about what's right for you. Now, what you see on the screen is an excerpt from the invitation to apply. It's an excerpt from the invitation to apply, and some of you may have joined our webinar last week where we looked at the invitation to apply in some more depth and really walked through it page by page. it says, and I'm going to read this first, for every $1,250 in annual base federal funding, at least one unduplicated RSVP volunteer must be placed in work plans that either A, result in national performance measure outcomes in any of the focus areas or capacity building measures, or, so you've got a choice here, there's an or, meaning a choice, or engage volunteers in an evidence-based program that results in an output in health education. Output there. So there's an output there instead of just an outcome. And then for years 2 and 3, it's basically the same, but the difference is that the amount changes from 1,250 to 1,000. The amount changes from 1,250 to 1,000. For the rest of this webinar, we'll be focusing on what's going on in years 2 and years 3. And I'm curious if anybody in the chat box can suggest why that might be. Why are we going to focus on years 2 and years 3 for the rest of this webinar? Let's see if anybody's got an idea. I see some people typing. Let's see if we've got any suggestions coming in. Karen says that's where the majority of funding will be. David says that's when you show the impact. These are all good suggestions, but I'm going to add one more, which is that that's when CNCS really focuses on whether or not you've achieved what you said you would achieve, right? That's when we go back and say, has this grantee basically done what it was trying to do? How did it all work out? We look actually at the end of year 3. We look at the last performance report at the end of year 3 to look at the grant as a whole. So you have this transition here, this transition where at year 1 there's one level and for years 2 and 3 there's another level. But we're going to be focusing on what your focus should really be on at the end of it all. You can think of it as basically having 3 years to transition through any changes you might be making. And you might decide to make some changes. You might not, but you might decide to make some changes because flexibility is the heart of this new system. We've gone away from that old egg, that percentage-based system, and gone to this new system based around this flat amount, specifically to increase flexibility. So I see Carrie's asked a question about different combinations of volunteers, and we're going to work through some specific examples. And I think those examples, Carrie, will answer your question, because the fact is you do have a lot of flexibility. But we'll be focusing on years 2 and years 3 because that's what you should really focus on when you're putting together your work plans. So these are the requirements. Let's think about what they mean and how you can put them into action. And the first thing that you need to do is determine the amount of unduplicated volunteers who need to be allocated in this specific way, who need to be allocated in the way that fits these requirements that we just looked at. How do you do that? Well, it's a pretty simple calculation. You take your total federal funding level and you divide it by 1,000. If we were focusing on year 1, you would divide it by 1,250, but we're not. We're focusing on year 3. So we'll be in this webinar dividing by 1,000. And that tells you the number of unduplicated volunteers you need to program in this specific way, right? By dividing by 1,000. So let's try a simple example. Let's say we've got an organization called Townsville RSVP. Hopefully there are no Townsville RSVPs out there. And let's say that they receive $100,000 in federal funding, $100,000 in federal funding. How many unduplicated volunteers do they need to program in this specific way? This is some pretty easy math. Even I can do it, right? 100,000 divided by 1,000 is 100. Now we threw something else into this example, which is that they currently have 300 unduplicated volunteers. So they're entering the process with more volunteers than they need to meet these requirements. And that's going to be a consistent theme that we see here. We think that that's going to be the case for most organizations, nearly all RSVP sponsors. So we've done our first step, though. We figured out how many they need to program, 100, even though they've got a total of 300 unduplicated volunteers. Okay. Let's do another quick example. There's going to be a poll popping up on your screen in just a minute. Don't fill out this one yet. All right, suppose a sponsor receives $275,000 in annual federal funding. It currently has 500 unduplicated volunteers. How many unduplicated volunteers must it program to meet these requirements? I see some answers coming in, and I'm going to go ahead and share the results we've got so far because we're all good at math and we don't have a lot of time. It looks like you guys are tracking, right? $275,000 divided by 1,000 is 275. Okay, great work, everybody. Now let's figure out what we do with those volunteers. Let's figure out what we do with those volunteers. As I mentioned, the real theme of all of this discussion is flexibility. When we allocate these required volunteers, we've got a lot of flexibility. Basically, according to the invitation to apply, we've got two major options. NPM outcomes in any combination of focus areas or capacity building, or outputs in evidence-based programs related to health education. So those are the two basic options. But you can see within those options, and particularly within the first one, there's options built in because we have several focus areas. When we go forward, we're going to call these two things outcome-based work plans for short. So if I use the term outcome-based work plans, when I use the term outcome-based work plans, just know that I'm talking about both of these combined. Even though one technically only focuses on outputs, for short, I'm going to call them outcome-based work plans. And that includes, like I said in the first option, all of our focus areas, including, and actually all of our focus areas, and in addition to that, also capacity building. Here are our focus areas. As a reminder, RSVP programs do need to choose a primary focus area. You do need to choose a primary focus area, but, and here's the important part, you don't need to program all of these volunteers or any specific percentage of volunteers into that primary focus area. You can do multiple focus areas. I saw Karen ask, can you use both options? I think both options referring to both these outcomes and evidence-based programming, and that's right, you can do both. You can do both. Let's do some examples, and I think it'll make it a little bit clearer. All right, Townsville RSVP, 100 unduplicated volunteers. Let's say their primary focus area is Healthy Futures. What can they do? Well, they could choose to program all 100 of these into outcomes in Healthy Futures. That's one option. Keep it simple. That's my primary focus area where I expect to have the greatest impact. I'm going to program all 100 unduplicated volunteers into outcomes in Healthy Futures. But that's not the only thing that they can do. Maybe they want to program 75 into outcomes in Healthy Futures, but they've got these other work plans that they're really proud of, and they want to program 25 of that 100 into outcomes in education. That's okay too. That's okay too. They can do both. And maybe they're going to program 75 in outputs in evidence-based health education programs and 25 in education, right? So this is an exact example where they're doing both. To answer your question, Karen, you can do both. You can absolutely do both. And they've got the other 25 programmed into outcomes in education. Christine says, so the required number of volunteers in Outcome PM and EVP, sweet. Yes, the one note I'll add to that is for this category, the evidence-based programs is related only to health education evidence-based programs. We haven't expanded it beyond that yet, so just be careful, everybody, when you're doing this. Ursula asks, can you have them all in disaster? And the key word that we're looking at is actually outcomes. So if you can find a work plan with outcomes in disaster, that would be okay. The catch there is it's very hard to have a work plan with an outcome in disaster because almost by definition you can't plan on disasters. Preparedness is maybe the only exception. So that's relatively rare. And I'd have to check and look at the exact performance measures to see what's available there. But that would be the only trick there. In general, the idea is any of the focus areas, if you have an outcome, you can program unduplicated volunteers there to meet this requirement. All right, let's do some more examples. Hang on while another question populates on the screen. We're going to start with something simple, something that we've already done. Neighborhood Area Agency on Aging receives $95,000 in annual base federal funding. They currently have 195 unduplicated volunteers. How many unduplicated volunteers must they program in this way? Okay, I see some answers populating. We won't keep you in suspense too long. Right, everybody can divide by 1,000. Perfect. Perfect. All right, but now we're going to make it a little bit more complicated and see what they actually are going to do with these. So we know that they must program 95 unduplicated volunteers in this way. Let's say their primary focus area is education. You've got three options. Which of these is okay? And you can choose more than one option. You can choose more than one option. Could they program 95 towards outcomes in education? Could they program 45 towards outcomes in education and 40 towards outcomes in healthy futures? Could they program 45 in outcomes in education and 40 towards outputs in economic opportunity? I want to highlight that word, outputs, in the final option. Okay, we've got some answers coming in. I'm going to go ahead and share the results. I think we're tracking pretty well, right? I think we're tracking pretty well. Yes, both of the top two options are okay because they're focused on outcomes. The last one, because it's 40 towards outputs in economic opportunity, because it's outputs in economic opportunity, that would not measure up. That would not meet. Oh, you know, somebody's pointing out to me that actually my math is wrong. Thank you. Those of you who did not choose number 2, you are actually correct. I said dividing by 1,000 is easy math. Apparently, I spoke too soon. Adding 40 and 45 is not easy math for me. Thanks, everybody, for catching us. I'm glad to see I wasn't the only one who made that mistake, though. Nevertheless, I think we get the idea. I think we get the idea and what we're trying. Yes, that was it. You know what, actually, yeah, I'm going to go with what Kathleen said. And, you know, that was a test. That was a test, and congratulations, Kathy, you passed. Everyone else, tisk, 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 shame on you, and shame on me, I should say. But I think we get the idea, right? You want to get up to that 95 number. We've got one other example in this series here. And actually, I'm going to hold this back a little bit. Don't answer that question yet. We're going to jump forward just a little bit before we get to that last question. The idea is you've got to program volunteers in these outcome-based work plans, these options, until you get to that minimum number, And then once you've got that minimum number, the natural question is, okay, what happens next? What can I do with my other volunteers? Townsville RSVP, we said, entered this process with 300 volunteers. Well, again, they've got flexibility. They've got another choice. They can reduce their total number of unduplicated volunteers to 100 and put them all in outcome-based work plans. They could reduce the number of unduplicated volunteers to 100 and put them all in outcome-based work plans, or they could retain all 300 of them as long as they place at least 100 in outcome-based work plans. And we're painting this as two options, but really you've got more flexibility even than that, because they could retain 299 unduplicated volunteers. They could retain 298 unduplicated volunteers, 297, as many as they want above that 100 number. The idea is that you've got an opportunity now to right-size your grant. If you're carrying more unduplicated volunteers than you can reasonably manage, now is a great time to think about what's right for you and what's the right level for you. If you're going to do that, we strongly encourage you to call your program officer to chat through the repercussions, to understand how it would affect things. But this is an opportunity to right-size your grant. You don't have to, and I hope we're making that very, very clear, that you've got choices here to make a decision that's right for your organization, that's right for your volunteers, and that's right for your community. But you've got the opportunity, to make a change in the number of unduplicated volunteers you're carrying, as long as you get to that minimum, number that you get at the end of year 3 by dividing your annual base federal funding by 1,000. So it's an opportunity, it's not a requirement. So let's look at some examples. What could Townsville RSVP do with its additional volunteers? Well, scenario one, we're saying that maybe they're really going to focus. Maybe that's what's right for them, just focusing. That's just focusing. They're going to focus on 100 unduplicated volunteers and outcomes. They're going to focus 100 unduplicated volunteers and outcomes, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to say, this is what we're really good at. This is where we're going to focus. But of course, as we said, they don't have to do that. They don't have to do that, and they may not want to do that. So maybe they're going to keep all 300. Maybe they're going to keep all 300. 100 unduplicated volunteers and outcomes in healthy futures, 100 unduplicated volunteers and outputs in education, and 100 in other community priorities. The point here is that those volunteers above that number, you don't need to put them in outcomes. You don't need to put them in outcome-based work plans. You've suddenly got a lot of flexibility. You can program them into any kind of work plan you want, including ones that don't have outcomes, Or they can go somewhere in between. And here what we've actually got is a scenario where there's a grantee who's going above and beyond that minimum because they have a good, strong outcome-based work plan in education, and because they want to be able to communicate that impact, they believe in the impact, they are programming 100 unduplicated volunteers and outcomes in healthy futures and 100 in outcomes in education. They don't need to stop once they reach that 100. It's a minimum standard, and if you've got good work plans, by all means, do that so that you can tell your story and so that we can carry that story on and amplify that. They also, of course, are taking advantage of the opportunity to put 50 in other community priorities. So they're reducing their number of unduplicated volunteers a little bit, but programming more in outcomes than they need to. So we've got options. We've got options about what we do with those additional volunteers. Kathy asks, are you going to explain how you quote-unquote graduated the current volunteers you decide to drop? You know, Kathy, that's actually really going to be a decision that's specific program to program, right? So first of all, many programs may decide not to graduate any, and that's okay. Second, depending on your program, remember, you've got until the end of year 3 to do this. Natural attrition may take care of some of that. For other programs, you may have partnerships where some of these individuals can go. You may have programs that you can walk away from with appropriate notice. It's really going to depend on your specific community and your specific program. So it's a good question, but there is no one-size-fits-all approach, and that's the kind of thing where I think your peers could really be helpful, and your program officer. Talk to your peers who've gone through this process before, and talk to your program officer, and they can help you think through the different ways to do that. Let's go ahead and do a quick knowledge check here. Okay. Remember we said Neighborhood Area Agency on Aging had 95 unduplicated volunteers in outcome-based work plans. They're now thinking about what to do with those additional 100 after they program their 95. They already programmed their 95. Choose all of the options that they could choose. Choose all of the options that would work for them. Could they program all in outcome-based work plans in education? Could they program 50 in output-only work plans in education and graduate the rest? Could they program 50 in output-only work plans and other community priorities and graduate the rest? Could they graduate all 100, leaving only the 95? Give that just a minute to load. I see people answering. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and share the results. I think we're tracking pretty well. All of these are options. All of these are options. They can choose to just keep programming the additional 100 to outcomes. They can choose to graduate some and use some other output-only work plans, including other community priorities. And they can choose to graduate all 100. I've got a little bit of content left to get through, but before I do that, I want to ask for questions. If you want to go ahead and ask any questions you have in the chat box right now, obviously we got off to a slow start here, so go ahead and ask questions. I am going to jump forward a little bit before I get back to them, but my hope is that I'll have some questions there waiting for me to circle back to. Okay, so go ahead, and if you have any questions, put them in the chat box right there. I think overall we're understanding, though, the new flexibilities that we have and the options that we've got here. Okay. So the next two items that we're going to talk about briefly are new performance measures. There are new performance measures in a number of different areas, and I say new performance measures, actually in some cases it's new service activities. In many other cases it's service activities plus performance measures, outputs and outcomes. This is just a snapshot. You can find all of these in Appendix B to the invitation to apply. Appendix B to the invitation to apply is where you can find all of these, including a lot more information about how to use each of them. So do take a look. We added ones that we were hearing a demand for, so hopefully these will look familiar to some of you. Hopefully they will address some needs that you have. So do take a look at Appendix B to see the full list and the full instructions of the performance measures that are available to you. I do see questions coming in. Thanks very much for that. Keep them coming. I'm going to step ahead one more piece of content, and then I'll circle back to pick up those questions. Oh, sorry, the one last thing I want to highlight is that output for participation in health education programs. If they're evidence-based health education programs, that can get you to that outcome number like we've already talked about. Let's take a quick peek. Into performance measure work plans. As we know, they've got 4 major components, and some of those have additional questions. When you enter your performance measures for the first time this year for the renewal, for your administrative renewal, you'll notice your work plans aren't there at first. You've got to add them, and you do that by clicking Begin. That'll take you to this screen where you can choose your focus areas. And when you click on a drop-down button, when you click on one of those areas, it'll give you a drop-down button to choose the objectives within that. And you do still need to choose a primary focus area. Then when you move on, you'll get to adding your work plans. At first, you won't see what you see up here at top, but you will see these fields down below, and you fill out your work plans one by one. The most important part of this entire session of this webinar is when you're filling this out, complete them based on what you see in the grant application instructions. That's another one of those tools on the Managing Senior Core Grants page. That is another tool, and it tells you exactly what to put in all of these fields. These are long fields. We ask a lot of questions for them, but we do tell you in that document exactly what to put in there. So please use that resource. After you add all your work plans, you then can allocate your unduplicated volunteers among your work plans. One thing that you'll notice is this is kind of a clunky process, and it's hard to think through all of this at one time. So there's another tool I'm going to recommend on the Managing Senior Core Grants page called the Work Plan Development Worksheets. The Work Plan Development Worksheets. Those will let you do a lot more experimentation, a lot more allocating here and there and seeing how things add up than the eGrant system. We really recommend working out what you're planning to do and having almost 100% idea of what you want to do before you ever go into eGrants. And another important step on that way is to talk it over with your program officer. One of the reasons why is because eGrants does do a couple of calculations that you see in the middle of the screen that actually are outdated. This is based on that old egg that we don't use anymore. So you can look at them if you want. They may be interesting to you, but they are not relevant for your minimum requirements this year. One thing that it does do is it'll add up all of your unduplicated volunteers and put it in that box right there, and that can be useful. As you see here, this is where you're actually going to allocate your unduplicated volunteers. So far, we're looking at work plans that all have outcomes. This particular grantee has outcome work plans, at least for their first 3, but then they have some more work plans underneath those 3 that are output only, and that's okay, as long as they're meeting their minimum requirements. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start to pick off these questions here. Let's see, Allison asked, for those in community priorities, we still need to report outputs for them? If you look at other community priorities and how it's discussed in the performance measure instructions, you'll see that all we ask is whether or not you met your goals for them. That's all we ask, whether or not you met your goals for them. That's it, just one simple question. So take a look at how that's worded in the performance measure instructions, but it's just one simple question. Karen says, if we missed last week, is there any way to avail that content after the fact? Yes, absolutely. We've actually still got the recording of it in process. It takes a couple days to process these things. We're going to send an email out with a link to both that webinar as well as this webinar, the recording, at least from where we really got going, and the slides as well. So stay tuned for that. Has food pantry support been disallowed as an outcome-based performance measure, Deborah? I would have to check the performance measure instructions to be able to answer that definitively. There's a lot in there, and I can't claim an encyclopedic knowledge of all of them. I will say offhand that I'm not aware of us removing anything that was there before. So if it was there before, I'm not aware of us removing it, but that is a question for the performance measure instructions, Appendix B. Ellen said, I got called away for about half of the webinar. You mentioned you were going to have this again. Yes, Ellen, we had some pretty bad technical difficulties for a good 15 to 20 minutes at the start, and I realized we may have lost some people during that time. So I'm going to go ahead and schedule another one. I can't tell you exactly when yet. I have to look at the calendar, and obviously we're going into a tough time, but we'll do it at least once more for anybody who got called away. Kathleen asks about AARP tax aid as a station. If anybody knows that, please jump in to give Kathleen the answer she's looking for. Amy asks if we are in year 2 of a 3-year grant, can we change our outputs, outcomes, and focuses? The answer is maybe, unfortunately, Amy. Sorry, I can't be more definitive. In general, we're looking at new flexibilities introduced when someone's going into the administrative renewal process. But depending on the reasons why, that may be possible in the middle of a grant too. And the way to find out if that makes sense for you is to talk to your program officer. If it makes sense, you know, if, for example, maybe there's a new community need, you're just trying to get out ahead of things, strategically adjust, very often that is possible. If you're just not achieving your outputs and your outcomes and you just are getting ready to hit year 3 and you're afraid, maybe that's a less compelling argument, but it really is going to be case by case. So talk to your program officer. Teresa asks, can you have more than one primary focus area? You can only have one primary allocation of where our programs are working. It doesn't have a lot of real statutory or regulatory strings attached to it, so just pick the one where you think you are making the greatest impact. Okay, I realize we've got a lot more questions here. Let's see, Christine says, I'm not seeing outcomes in health-related. Down to the end here, really going to be counted as supported number of volunteers. Apparently my audio is going in and out. Okay, let me pause and maybe talk a little bit slower. Sometimes if I talk too fast, that's the system reminding me that I am. I think I sound okay now. All right, sorry about that. It sounds like I might have started being cut out during the question about the primary focus areas. You do need to choose one primary focus area. You do need to choose one primary focus area. As I was saying, there's not a lot of baggage that comes with that. As we already talked about, you can actually program your unduplicated volunteers among many different focus areas. It's not like you have to do it all in the primary focus area, but you do have to choose one. Choose the one where you think you're going to make the greatest impact. Okay, some of the other questions that I see here, I may not be able to get to all of these today, but let's see which ones I can pick up. Carol says, when she got into your office today, it popped on my current credit. My program officer says that is correct. Is this right? Carol, if you're talking to your program officer, that's the best way to solve one-on-one unexpected issues. So if you've talked it through with your program officer and it all makes sense to you, that makes sense to me too. You know, what happens in e-grants, your program officer is really a great place to start with that. Under 4.1, e-grants has never let us use anything but a 0. A number 1 will not appear even if you try. Not totally sure, Joni, exactly 4.1, what you're referring to there. So sorry to hear if there are technical issues going on in the system. Many of you may know that there's an e-grants help desk that can help you with that. Christine says, I'm not seeing outcomes in health-related programs. Are volunteers in health-related EVP really going to be counted as supported number of volunteers. So Christine, first of all, there are many outcomes in the Healthy Futures focus area. I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, but in the Healthy Futures focus area, there are many outcomes for you to choose from. So if you're not finding those, take a look at the performance measure instructions and touch base with your program officer. And health-related evidence-based programs that have outputs will be counted towards that minimum requirement, as we talked. If there's health-related, evidence-based program that only gets you as far as an output, that's okay. And the reason why that's okay is because they are evidence-based. That means that we can be confident that their outputs are actually equivalent to outcomes because of the substantial amount of evidence behind them. Okay, Christine, she clarifies. She's referring specifically to some of those health education programs. Christine, do look at the performance measure instructions. We recently added, I shouldn't say recently, it's been at least a year now, a whole page just on those programs and how to take advantage of this evidence-based program output option for those programs. But they absolutely do, if you're following the performance measure instructions, evidence-based health education programs, check that box. Teresa asked me to clarify one more time, you can only have one primary focus area. Yes, you need to choose a primary focus area where you believe you're having the greatest impact. Okay, I know that was a lot of information in a pretty short amount of time. Thank you, everyone who hung in there with us. My apologies again for the technical difficulties. The recording and the slides will be available after the fact. And like I said, I'll actually go ahead and make sure we schedule this at least one more time so that everybody's got another opportunity. If you have more questions, as I'm sure you do, there's a lot to process here. Your program officer, as always, is the best resource for you. Okay. Thank you once again, everyone. Have a very happy holiday. Thanks for taking time out of a busy part of the year to come join us and learn. We hope to see you back soon. You're going to see a one question survey pop up on your screen. Let us know how we did, and that includes being honest if the technical difficulties are not the kind of thing you want to see. Please do be honest with this feedback. It helps us improve. Thank you all. Have a good one and happy holidays.